Welcome to another episode of Inside Today's Boardroom from Diligent Institute. I'm your host, Lisa Edwards. I'm really excited about our guest today. Today, we are talking to Bethany Mayer. She is the former president and CEO of Ixia, an advisor to Cirrus Capital, and board member at multiple companies, including Lam Research Company, Sempra Energy. She is the chair at Box Inc., and she was recently appointed to the board of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, where she sits on the technology committee. She is also a rare board expert in cybersecurity, having recently completed an MS in cybersecurity risk and strategy at NYU. Why did you feel the need to go back to school at this point and get a master's in cybersecurity?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that question. And I was I'm pretty sure I was the oldest person in the class. But I actually, there was a couple of reasons. One was I've been in the cybersecurity space for a long time in my career. I mean, pretty much since I want to say the early 2000s. And this was primarily in product development. Throughout the course of my career, I spent time as a cybersecurity vendor. But what I wanted to do as I began to work on boards was really understand the full breadth of the issue and the risk related to cybersecurity for boards and for companies. And what I had technical knowledge, but what I didn't have was all of the issues surrounding legal liability, potential risk from a reputational perspective, governance, and the regulatory areas of focus. And the NYU program is very unique because it combines technology and law in one master's, which to me is the perfect confluence of the issues that I face in the boardroom. So there weren't any other programs like it. And the only program that I could find was NYU, and it was a master's. So I made a decision. It was COVID. I was, barricaded in my house anyways. I might as well give this a shot. And at first it was very hard. And I know, Lisa, you're in the middle of this program too. At first it was like, oh man, going back to school. But I kind of got the hang of it and really loved it. It was so helpful to me. And I think it's very helpful to the boards that I serve on. I've always been the cybersecurity expert on the boards that I serve, but now I have a much broader perspective, and it really enhances my ability to help from a risk perspective and all of the issues, regulatory, et cetera.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the merging of the legal and regulatory framework issues with the actual engineering side, and having having that degree from both the engineering school and the law school, I think is really a powerful combination. So thank you, because I was going through my when I was going through my investigation into different programs, you were hugely helpful to that. So thank you for that. And obviously, the landscape for cybersecurity on boards and in corporate America in general has changed a lot. It is getting much more difficult, much more laden. Can you just talk about that landscape change a little bit and sort of what that means for board readiness? What do boards need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so the landscape has changed, I would say, very dramatically over the last 5 to 7 years. Starting with some of the early sort of big hits to corporations, primarily starting with Target and Home Depot, and then moving into Equifax. I mean, these were, if you remember, huge issues that no one had ever faced before, or that we hadn't heard about in corporate America, which was basically being attacked and having either customer information stolen, or IP stolen, or reputational damage occurring. And it was very serious, and it only escalated. Of course, as you know, the SolarWinds attack, which happened fairly recently and hit not only corporate America, but all of many of the agencies in the federal government were affected, and very seriously. In fact, I'm not sure that the extent to the damage is known at this time. So, yes, the landscape has changed, and the concern for boards has dramatically ratcheted up, and a number of things have occurred. And what I would say from a board perspective is it really changes what you do to be prepared, because it will happen. So then the question is, okay, what do you do when it happens, and how much have you prepared for that to happen as a board? And I think that's really the key, is how you prepare as a board, the information that you have as a board, and the work that you're doing on oversight of the cybersecurity activities and expertise in the company. And, you've got to, this is like a new game. So we have to really enhance our abilities, but do a number of other things that we can talk about.
So, I know when you recently joined the board of HP, so congratulations on that. And they promptly put you on the technology committee. We actually starting to see technology committees, or sort of more smaller focused committees, starting to emerge as a trend as we look at some of the analysis of proxy data that we do. If you could point to a couple of things for boards to say, to get ready for this landscape, whether it's you need a committee, or you need people, or you need focus, what would those things be in terms of, if you would say there's 3 or 4 tactical things that I would tell a board, go get ready and start thinking about, what would those things be?
So I wanted to step back for a minute. There is what's happened over the course of the past, I would say, 3 years, is the federal government has gotten much more engaged around cybersecurity. And as you know, not just CISA, which is, by the way, a wonderful organization that sits on the president's cabinet, Jen Easterly in particular, but also the SEC, the FTC, and the FCC have all engaged around cybersecurity in corporate America. And the SEC in particular has begun to develop a criterion for boards. As we know, there should be an announcement.
Well, they don't know if they're going to announce tomorrow, but tomorrow they're holding, it's first on the agenda tomorrow morning.
Right. So we'll see if they finally come out with these guidelines. They're calling them guidelines for boards. And in particular, what they're looking for is what level of expertise you have in the boardroom. And it's sort of funny. It's really a little bit weird timing. So I finished my master's program in May of 2022, and my thesis was on why you, or do you need a cybersecurity expert on your board? That was the question that I asked. And the answer to that question was, yes, you do. And it doesn't always come in the form of a CISO, but it comes in the form of someone who has studied cybersecurity specifically, because it's different than digital technology. It's different than a number of the technologies in the market today that many people have as part of their technical background. So it was a bit ironic to have I didn't finish the thesis, I finished my final draft, and boom, the SEC came out with a guideline around this. What you'll note is that it will be likely, just as the financial risk was very clear around Enron and Tyco and all the things that happened back in the early 2000s, where we ended up with a financial expert on the board. This is moving in that direction. It's because the risk has increased. So in terms of what you need on your board, first of all, they will be asking you if you have cybersecurity expertise on the board. And this isn't just, as I said, random technology knowledge. It's very specific. So you're going to have someone on this board who has done some level of education or has a background in it. And I have some advice on that as well. But so that's one thing, is have someone educate themselves or find someone who has it in their background, or they're a CISO, to be on your board. I think the other thing you need to think about is about pulling the risk out into a committee of its own. Now, it could be a risk committee where you gather all the enterprise risks and you put them in a single committee. but it could also be its own committee because the risk is so high. The audit committee, and I hear you, audit committees are wonderful, love them, but they have over 40 subjects that they focus on. That's a lot. And cybersecurity all by itself is a really, significant risk. And so putting it in its own category or putting it in a risk committee, I think is a good option, or a technology committee. But having it separate and delving into it in detail, I think is important. And then I would suggest that you think about putting together and having an incident response plan for your company. Because basically, as we know, this is going to happen. And we all, as board members, need to know what the heck we're going to do when it does. Who's going to call whom? Who will be notified? What do we do about internal and external responses? And because of the new SEC regulation, potentially we would be responsible for then reporting either material or non-material breaches over a period of time. So those are all things that really matter. And the other things I would suggest is make sure you have a NIST assessment. Utilize external experts to help you with your NIST assessment. So score your company. Then you can basically say, here's where we are, and here's the roadmap where we need to go in order to be better. And weigh the risk versus, what your company is doing to determine what your score should be.
Really good takeaways. I think I love the notion of it's kind of not a question of if, but when, and the more prepared you are for that, whether that's understanding your digital assets, having a recovery plan, having segmentation of your network, whatever those things are, that the board should be having those conversations well in advance of something happening. So I think it's really it's very timely. I might want to sort of invite you on air for a future episode once the SEC does finalize. It sounds like they are imminent, but one never really knows, because we've thought that for a long time, to your earlier point. So thank you for joining us for this super important area that boards really need to lean in on. That wraps it for today's episodes of Inside Today's Boardrooms, and see everyone next week for another episode. Thanks so much, Bethany.